My brother used my name to lease a $72,000 Range Rover and told everyone I was the thief. Trash like you can't fight family, he laughed, while Mom smiled. I calmly pulled out my federal badge. I don't need a lawyer, I said. The notification came in at 6:14 in the morning. Coffee was already in my hand, and my phone was face up on the kitchen counter when the credit alert pushed through. One new account. Auto lease. $72,000. Monthly payment, $1,847. Opened 6 days ago at a dealership 40 minutes from my mother's house. The mug went down on the counter and stayed there. 12 years in federal law enforcement builds a clock inside your chest that does not care about weekends or holidays. But that alert stopped everything. The account was listed under my name, my social security number, my date of birth. The vehicle was a Range Rover Sport, autobiography trim, Carpathian gray. The signature on the lease application had my name printed beneath it, but the handwriting was not mine. Whoever signed had practiced the loop on the E and the angle on the V, but the pressure was wrong. My signature lands heavy on the first stroke and lifts at the end. This one was even all the way across. Careful, rehearsed. The person who had done this knew my handwriting well enough to practice it. That narrowed the list to almost nobody. My home office is at the end of the hall. The personal credit monitoring app on my phone had caught the Range Rover, but a full identity pull required better tools. As a special agent with Homeland Security Investigations, Financial Crimes Unit, those tools are part of my daily work. The access is logged, time-stamped, reviewed quarterly. That morning, before Harper woke up, I typed in my own social security number and pulled my full identity file. What came back was not one account. It was three: the Range Rover lease at $72,000, a furniture credit line at $14,200, opened at Meridian Home Furnishings 11 days before the car, an appliance lease at $15,800, opened at a warehouse retailer 2 weeks before that. Total, $92,000 in debt attached to my name in 60 days. 11 pages came off the printer. My palm went flat against the top sheet and stayed there while the house stayed quiet around me. Harper was still asleep down the hall. I almost walked into the bedroom and woke her up right then. I almost said the words out loud before the full picture was assembled. But 12 years of investigation work teaches you that the worst thing you can do is speak before you have everything. You speak once. You speak with everything. So the pages went into a folder, the folder went onto the kitchen table, and the reading continued. That night, at 2:14 in the morning, the printed report was still spread across the kitchen table next to a yellow legal pad with a timeline on it. The house was dark, except for the light over the table. Harper came in without making a sound. She was wearing the gray sweatshirt she sleeps in, the one from her college that has been washed so many times the letters are almost gone. She went to the counter, started the coffee maker, and stood there with her back to me while it brewed. The machine clicked and hissed in the quiet kitchen. When it finished, she poured a full mug, walked it to the table, set it next to my right hand, and sat down across from me. She did not ask what the pages said. She did not ask what was going to happen. She looked at the stack the way you look at something you already understand. 40 minutes passed without a word between us. The coffee steam rose and thinned and disappeared. That was the most honest conversation we had about any of it. The coffee went down, the timeline got 3 more entries, and when the folder finally closed at 3 a.m., every number, every date, and every account was mapped. What was not yet clear was how my brother had gotten my social security number. That part came later, and it was worse than the car. The call to Troy went out 7 days after the credit alert. My desk at work, door closed, voice recorder running on my phone. One-party consent state. He picked up on the second ring. Elliot, the way people say your name when they have already decided to be annoyed. Not nervous. Not guilty. Annoyed like the call was interrupting something more important than a conversation with the man whose name he had stolen. The facts came out flat. Credit report. Range Rover lease. Furniture line. Appliance account. The total. Documentation on all three. 4 seconds of quiet. Then a laugh. Not a short one. It went on long enough that someone in the background asked what was funny. My mother. Her voice was unmistakable. Elliot, Troy said, his voice shifting into the register he has used since we were kids. The one that means he has decided he is the smartest person in the room. You always been the dramatic one. This is a family arrangement. Your credit was available. You can dress it up in whatever federal language you want. The accounts were opened without my knowledge, without my consent, and without my signature. What he had done had a legal name. Identity theft. So what? He said. You want to arrest your own brother? Over a car payment? That is what your little badge is for now? Mom is right here, Elliot. You want to tell her you are filing paperwork on your own blood? Another laugh from the background, not nervous. The same laugh she uses when Troy says something she thinks is clever. Tell him, Mom, Troy said. Tell him what family means. Tell him what happens to people who go running to the government instead of handling things at home. Gail's voice came through faint but clear. He will come around. He always does. Trash like you can't fight family, Troy said. You ran off, married some woman Mom can barely look at, and now you sit behind a government desk pretending your little badge means something. It means nothing. You know what you are, Elliot? You are a man who couldn't even protect his own Social Security number. That is what you are. And you want to come at me? Come at me. See what family does. 3 seconds of silence on the line. That was a courtesy, I said. It will be the only one. The call ended. The recorder had all of it. Through the glass panel of my office door, the floor was visible. Agents at terminals, phones ringing, the ordinary machinery of a working day. 4 new lines went into the case file that had been started 7 days earlier. The voice recording got saved to a secure folder on my phone and backed up to a second location. Troy had laughed through most of that call. He had called me trash with my mother listening. He had dared me to come at him. The recording would go into evidence if the case ever went to trial, and every word of it, every laugh, every dare would be played back in a room where nobody was laughing. Then the monitor went back to the report that had been waiting since before the call. Work continued. The rest could wait. If you have ever had someone use your name like it belonged to them, you understand what the next 6 weeks look like. And if you are watching this on Karma Unfolded, stay with this one, because what my brother did with a car was only the surface. Troy is 4 years older than me. Growing up, that gap meant he got to everything first and left nothing behind. He was the one who got the bigger bedroom when we moved to the house on Sycamore. The one whose football gear my mother replaced every season without complaint, while my cleats stayed 2 sizes too small for a year and a half. The one who borrowed my father's truck at 17, wrapped it around a mailbox, and was back behind the wheel inside a month. When I was 18, my father Kenneth bought me a used Honda Civic for $4,200. It was the only significant thing he ever gave me. Troy had dropped out by then, a Dewey on his record, and a string of warehouse jobs that never lasted longer than 4 months. My father did not buy Troy a car because Troy had already proven he would wreck it. Troy has never forgotten that $4,200. He has mentioned it at every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every family gathering, where the math of who got what came up. 15 years later, he was still counting that car like a debt I owed him. What stays with me most from those years is a small detail. There was a plastic document holder on the kitchen counter near the back door. My mother kept insurance cards in it, utility bills, things she said needed to stay organized. When I was 17, she put my Social Security card in that holder. She told me she kept important things safe. That card stayed there through my training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, through my first posting in Atlanta, through my transfer back to the regional office, through my wedding to Harper. 16 years. Never once asked for back. A small piece of paper in a plastic slot in my mother's kitchen, and my entire adult life had been built on the assumption that it was safe there. I almost drove to her house in those first days after the credit alert, just to open the back door, reach into the holder, and check if the card was still in its slot. What stopped me was not strategy. It was the image of that holder itself. The plastic slots, the insurance cards, the utility bills, my mother's handwriting on the envelopes. If the card was gone, that kitchen counter would never look the same again. And I was not ready for that yet. So the waiting continued. The card would either be there or it would not. And if it was not there, the answer to where it went would tell me more than the card itself ever could. What was not yet known was that the card was already gone. Had been for months. And my mother was the one who had handed it over. On day 7, the same morning as the call to Troy, my supervisor got a full briefing on everything. The credit reports, the 3 accounts, the forged signature, the prepaid phone numbers, the timeline. Within the hour, Nadine Cross was assigned as lead investigator on the case. Nadine has been in financial crimes longer than anyone on our floor. 14 years. She has a way of listening where her hands go still and her eyes do not leave your face until you are completely finished. When she is done listening, she does not ask follow-up questions. She starts working. "You are officially the victim and the reporting witness," she said when the briefing ended. "From here, the investigation runs through me. You do not touch the case file. You do not pull records. You do not contact subjects. You provide statements when asked, and you stay out of the evidentiary chain." That was fine. Better than fine. The case being out of my hands meant Troy could not come to me with an apology and a handshake and expect the whole thing to vanish. Once Nadine had it, it moved on its own schedule, through its own system. And the only way to stop it was to prove the fraud never happened, which it had. Nadine ran the 3 accounts separately that afternoon. The Range Rover lease had been opened at AutoNation Prestige. My social security number, my date of birth, my home address, but a different phone number. Prepaid carrier, purchased 60 days before the lease. The furniture credit line showed the same architecture. Different phone, different email, created 11 days before the account opened. Delivery address, 4417 Pelham Court. The appliance lease used a 3rd email. 3rd prepaid number. Same pattern. 3 accounts, Nadine said. 3 separate prepaid numbers. 3 throwaway emails. This is not someone panicking at a car lot. This is someone who sat down and planned it. She ran the Pelham Court address, cross-referenced it, looked at her screen. "That address belongs to a Monique Hayes," she said, 28 years old. "Employed at Cornerstone Title and Escrow." She paused. She co-signed the Range Rover lease. A co-signer on a fraudulent lease using a false residential address, employed at a title company. Monique handled identity documents and ownership transfers for a living. She understood exactly what she was signing. Under federal statute, that is conspiracy to commit identity theft and wire fraud. Not a state matter. Not something that gets resolved with a family apology. That same afternoon, Nadine contacted AutoNation Prestige and spoke with the manager, Cliff Reno. She provided the fraud documentation and the case file number. The dealership initiated repossession proceedings the same day. Separately, fraud alerts went on to all 3 credit bureaus under my name. The door Troy had walked through was closed. What had not been clear until that same week was how far Troy had already gone with his version. A woman from our mother's church stopped me in a grocery store parking lot. She put her hand on my arm, leaned in close like she was delivering a confidence, and said, "Troy told us what happened. He said you stole his information, took the Range Rover, then used your government connections to erase the paper trail when the payments came due. Is that true?" "No," I said. "None of it is true." She walked away without saying anything else. She did not look convinced. Troy had not just lied. He had made me the criminal. He had told the neighborhood, the church, and the extended family that I was the identity thief, that I had stolen the car and framed him. He had turned the entire story inside out and planted it in every room he walked into for 2 weeks straight, and my mother had let him say it without correcting a single word. Every time someone looked at me sideways at the gas station or did not return my wave on the street, I understood that Troy's version had gotten there first. The thief had named the victim, and the victim had said nothing because the victim was still building a case. Nadine's background pull on Monique Hayes confirmed what the database had shown. 14 months at Cornerstone Title. Deed preparation. Settlement coordination. She knew what a fraudulent signature looked like because catching them was her job. She co-signed anyway. Troy's credit file told the rest. Score, 498. 2 charge-offs. A repossession on a used Kia in 2021. A collections account from a gym membership. No lender in the country would put him in a $72,000 vehicle. So he went looking for a name with better numbers. Mine was 789. Above 780 for 6 straight years. The kind of profile that gets same-day approval. He did not steal my identity because he was desperate. He stole it because it was the best one he had access to. The shape of it became clear sitting at my desk that afternoon. The $4,200 Honda Civic. The grievance Troy had carried to every family dinner for 15 years. In his head, that car was proof that the family had invested in me and abandoned him. The Range Rover was not impulsive. It was Troy collecting what he believed he was owed, using the only tool available to him. My name. The difference between Troy's version and mine is simple. He thinks the family gave me an advantage and ran with it. What actually happened is that our father spent $4,200 on a 10-year-old Honda because one son had not wrecked his truck, had not dropped out, and had not gotten arrested at 19. The other son did all 3. The car was not favoritism. It was math. And Troy had spent 15 years turning that math into a debt he decided the family owed him. Nobody owed him my name. On day 11, the call to my mother went out from the front seat of my car, parked in the driveway after work. Not to confront her. Not yet. One answer to one question was all that was needed, and the way she answered it would tell me whether she had been tricked or whether she had participated. Gail picked up already talking. She had heard from Troy. Family handled things inside. The word ungrateful came up twice in 30 seconds. Is my social security card still in the holder by the back door? 3 seconds of silence. Then, why would you ask me that? Not yes. Not no. A deflection dressed as a question. The kind of response that means the person already knows the answer and does not want to give it. Because my social security number was used to open 3 fraudulent accounts in my name, and the only copy of my card has been in your kitchen since I was 17. You always left things with me, she said. I keep important things safe. Is the card still there, Mom? Another silence. Longer Troy needed it, she said, for the car. He told me you two had an arrangement. He said he was going to put it back. The kitchen went quiet. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to stop. She had not been tricked. She had not been pressured. She had reached into that holder, pulled out my social security card, and placed it in Troy's hand because he asked for it, and she decided that was reasonable. She had given him the key to my financial identity the same way she had given him everything else his whole life. Without asking me, without telling me, without once considering that what belonged to me was not hers to distribute. He said you two had an arrangement, she repeated, quieter. Like saying it again would make it more true. There was no arrangement. What you described has a legal name. Material facilitation of identity theft. The referral that Nadine is filing will include every account, every date, every document, and every person involved. You cannot be serious. Over a piece of paper? Over a card? That piece of paper is how Troy opened every one of those accounts. That card was the key to everything he took. You do not know what it is like for him, she said. You got the training. You got the career. You got out. He has been here the whole time trying to keep his head above water. Your father bought you that car. Nobody bought Troy anything. Dad bought me a $4,200 Honda because I did not wreck his truck, drop out, or get arrested, I said. Troy did all 3. That is not fair. It is math, Mom, and none of it gave Troy the right to open 3 accounts in my name. He was going to pay it back, she said. He told me. He had a plan. His plan was my credit score. That was the entire plan. She was quiet for a long time. The call ended. That was the last conversation about this topic. Ever. The call had been made from my car, parked in the driveway with the engine off. 6 minutes passed before the door opened. I almost went inside and told Harper everything right then. The words were already forming, but the Sunday dinner was days away, and the case was already filed. There would be time to explain after the folder was on the table, and every person at that dinner understood whose name was on the lease and whose name was on the badge. Nadine had submitted the federal referral that morning. Separate investigative team. She review Q. My badge number listed as reporting agent, not originating investigator. The distinction mattered. The case was not mine to run. That was exactly what made it unstoppable. My mother hosts Sunday dinner on the second Sunday of every month. Aunt Colleen drives in from 2 towns over. Cousin Nate usually shows up. Troy is always there with Monique. Kenneth comes when he feels like it. Nobody had invited me. That did not matter. The car parked on the street at 1:40 in the afternoon. A dark blue folder sat on the passenger seat. Inside, my personal credit reports showing the 3 fraudulent accounts, the forged lease copy from AutoNation, the dealership fraud confirmation from Cliff Reno, the credit bureau dispute acknowledgments, and the federal referral receipt with the case number printed at the top. No internal memos. No confidential investigative documents. Just the paper trail that belonged to me as the victim. The front door opened without a knock. A key she did not know about still worked. The table was full, Gail at the head. Kenneth to her left, not looking up from his plate. Troy across from him with Monique beside him. Aunt Colleen at the far end. Nate next to her, phone face down on the table. Pot roast. The whole house smelled like it. Troy looked up. Nobody invited you. The chair at the foot of the table, my old chair, pulled out without a word. The folder went onto the tablecloth. Gail looked at Troy and smiled. The same smile she had worn since Troy first told the family his version. The smile of a woman certain she already knew who the criminal at her table was. "We already know what you did, Elliot," she said. "Troy told us everything. You used his information, took the Range Rover, then tried to report him when you could not keep up with the payments." She reached for her phone. "Sit down. We are going to find you a lawyer before your government job hears about this." Aunt Colleen was nodding along. Nate was looking at his plate. Monique had her hand on Troy's arm. Every person at that table had already decided who the criminal was before I walked through the door. Troy had spent weeks building this version. He had told it at church. He had told it at the grocery store. He had told it here, in this room, over pot roast and rolls, and my mother had nodded and passed the butter and never once asked to see a document. Troy leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirk locked in, trash like you can't fight family. My hand went inside my jacket. The federal badge came out. Gold shield. Homeland Security investigations. My name on the credential card beneath it. It went face up on the table beside the folder. "I don't need a lawyer," I said. "I'm not the suspect." Troy's smirk disappeared. The folder opened. The Range Rover was leased in my name. My social security number, forged signature, Troy's prepaid phone number on the application, Monique's address listed as residence, Monique's co-signature on the second page. Each document came out and lay flat on the tablecloth as the words landed. Account number. Date, $847 monthly payment. $72,000 total financing. Aunt Colleen leaned forward. She read the top sheet without being invited to. Her fork went down on her plate with a small click and did not come back up. Her eyes moved from the page to Troy and stayed there. $14,200 furniture line. Meridian Home Furnishings. Throwaway email. Prepaid phone. The page went down. 5 the then price. $5,800 appliance lease. Third email. Third prepaid number. Same pattern. That page went down too. Monique's hand went flat on the table when the Pelham Court address was read aloud. She stopped chewing. The color left her face in a slow wave from her forehead to her jaw. The last document came out. The federal referral receipt. Case number printed at the top. Filed by a separate 8-side team. Already in the review queue. It landed on the tablecloth with a sound that was too soft for what it carried. The case was referred last week, I said. A separate federal team has it. Not mine to control, not mine to stop, and not something that goes away if the car gets returned. Monique's chair scraped back half an inch. She looked at Troy. He did not look back. His jaw was locked shut, and a vein had appeared on the side of his neck that had not been there 30 seconds earlier. Gail shot to her feet. Her chair hit the wall behind her. You stop this right now. You do not come into my house and put government papers on my dinner table. You already know about these papers, Mom. You gave him the card. The room shifted. Aunt Colleen looked at Gail with an expression that had never been at this dinner table before. Gail's mouth opened, and nothing came out for 2 full seconds. She looked at the pages, then at Troy, then at me. She sat back down slowly, like the chair might not hold her. Nate pushed away from the table without standing up. He looked at the pages spread across the tablecloth and said nothing. That was the most honest response in the room. Troy's jaw tightened. I was going to pay you back. I had a plan. I just needed time. There is no record of any repayment. Not a call, not a transfer, not a text. 60 days and 0. You want to put your own brother in prison? He pushed his chair back. Over a car? You want to do that to Mom? You signed my name, not the other way around. His voice dropped, faster now, calculating, I will sign the car over right now. Today, we get a piece of paper. This is done. The referral is already filed. The case belongs to a federal team that does not take phone calls from family members offering to give cars back. Troy looked at Monique. Then he pointed at me. This is about Harper. You were different before her. You would have handled this inside the family before her. The co-signer page slid across the table to Monique's side. Her name, her employer, her address, her signature. She looked at it. Looked at Troy. Said very quietly, you promised me this would never come back on me. If you are watching this on Karma Unfolded, this is the part people remember. Not the loudest moment. The quietest one. You told everyone at this table that I stole your identity, I said. You told the church. You told the neighborhood. You told Mom, and she smiled and believed every word. The room was still. You committed 3 federal crimes using my name. You called me trash. You said my badge meant nothing. You said I could not protect my own name. 2 seconds of quiet. The man who could not protect his own name is the one who just showed you a federal case number. The government desk you laughed at trained me to build the file sitting in front of you. And the badge you said meant nothing is on this table right now with my name on it. Troy's hands went flat. His face drained to the color of wet cement. His mouth opened once and nothing came out. His shoulders dropped forward. His eyes moved from the referral to Monique to me and found nothing to hold on to. Aunt Colleen was staring at Gail. Gail was staring at the tablecloth. You used my name to buy a car, Troy. My name is now the reason you are going federal. Kenneth set his fork down, pushed his chair back, and stood up. He walked into the kitchen without a word. He did not come back. You told everyone I was the thief, I said. Now tell them whose name is listed as the victim. Nobody answered. The folder closed. The badge went back into my jacket. The account pages stayed on the table. They belonged in that room after I left. The front door pulled shut behind me. The car started. The drive home was quiet. The repo truck arrived 7 days after the dinner. Troy called at 7:22 a.m. No answer. 2 more calls in 4 minutes. No answer to those either. An hour later, a neighbor named Patricia sent Gail a text asking if everything was all right because there was a flatbed in front of the house and men with clipboards. Gail forwarded the text without comment. What came back through a cousin later that week was the picture. Troy in his undershirt on the sidewalk, barefoot on the concrete because the doorbell had not given him time to find shoes. The repo agent with a clipboard and a form that needed no signature from the man standing in front of him. The recovery document listing my name as the fraud victim whose identity had been used to finance the vehicle. Troy stood on that sidewalk and watched the Range Rover, Carpathian Gray, autobiography trim, $72,000, 63 days of use, get winched onto a flatbed and driven away while Patricia watched from her porch with her arms crossed. She did not wave. She did not walk over. She stood there and watched the whole thing, and then went back inside her house. The neighborhood that Troy had spent weeks telling his version to, the version where I was the thief and he was the victim, that neighborhood was now watching his car get repossessed at 7 a.m. while he stood barefoot on the sidewalk with nothing to say. Patricia had heard Troy's story. Now she was watching the other one. The $1,847 monthly payment disappeared from my credit file 4 days later. Fraudulent, closed, no balance owed. Monique Hayes was placed on administrative leave from Cornerstone Title and Escrow 10 days after the dinner. Investigators contacted her employer for records related to the federal referral, and the company placed her on leave pending an internal review of every client file she had touched in 14 months. Her access to the company's document systems was revoked the same afternoon. 14 months of work, 14 months of client files, all under review because of one co-signature on a lease she knew was fraudulent. She texted Troy from a parking lot that afternoon, "I told you not to use my address. I told you twice." Troy did not respond. She sent the same message 90 minutes later. No response to that one either. Nate had not returned any of Troy's calls or texts in 3 weeks. Every message went to silence. The cousin who had sat at that table with his mouth shut had decided silence was the only honest position, and he held it. Aunt Colleen called me 9 days after the dinner. Her voice was different from any conversation we had ever had. She said, "I sat there after everyone left and read every page you put on that table. Then I did not know it was that much." She would not be at the next Sunday dinner. She did not explain why. 5 weeks after the dinner, Troy went to AutoNation Prestige. His attorney had advised a voluntary settlement attempt to demonstrate cooperation. Troy went. He brought Kenneth. The two of them walked into the dealership together, which was the last time they walked anywhere together. Cliff Reno called that afternoon. A man matching my brother's description had come in with an older gentleman. Cliff told him the account was in federal fraud proceedings. He asked Troy to leave. Troy started explaining that the whole situation was a family miscommunication, that his brother had overreacted. Cliff asked him to leave again. Kenneth walked out of the dealership ahead of Troy, did not wait by the door, did not wait at the car, did not look back once. Troy came out 30 seconds later and his father was already on the sidewalk, walking toward the parking lot alone, hands in his pockets, moving at the pace of a man who had decided he was finished with something and was not going to explain what. The two of them had driven there together in Kenneth's truck. Kenneth got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the space. Troy was still standing on the sidewalk when the truck turned onto the main road. He stood there for a while after that. Cliff watched from the window. The older man just walked. Cliff said, "Did not say a word to your brother. Just got in his truck and left him standing there." 31 days after the dinner, my mother rang my doorbell at 11:20 on a Saturday morning. She was standing on the porch in her church coat, a plain white envelope in both hands, a folded sheet of paper in the other. Harper was inside. The door pulled shut behind me. "He wants to start making it right," Gail said. "There is $3,000 in there. He wants you to know he is serious." She held out the folded paper. "He wrote you a letter." Both items came into my hands, 3 seconds of looking at them. Then a sealed legal envelope came out of my jacket. The federal referral receipt. Case number. Reviewing agent. Processing date. "Take the envelope, Mom. Elliot, he is your brother. Take the envelope." She took it. That is a copy of the federal referral. Case number. Reviewing agent. 2 weeks in the system. $3,000 does not interact with that document anyway. "What about what I want?" Her voice went quieter. "I am your mother. I have been your mother for 33 years, and you are standing on this porch looking at me like none of those years happened. The one time I hand your brother something he asked for because he told me you said it was fine, you want to put me in a federal document? You did not hand him something, I said. You handed him me. Both of Troy's envelopes went onto the porch railing. Not given back. Not taken inside. Mom, you gave him my Social Security card. You handed it to him. You did not ask me. You did not tell me. You reached into that holder and gave your son the thing he needed to steal from me, and you told yourself it was fine because you thought I would absorb it the way I have absorbed everything for 30 years. Eye contact held. Not absorbing this. This is the last time this door opens on this subject. The last call. The last dollar. The last letter. The last conversation. It is over. She stood on the porch holding the envelope, not reading it, just holding it. You used to be easier to talk to, she said. The door closed. The lock turned. Troy's envelopes stayed on the railing. 2 hours later, Harper checked the porch. The envelopes were gone. She came back inside and did not ask where they went. She did not ask who had been at the door. She sat down at the kitchen table and opened her laptop and let the house be quiet, the way she always did when she understood that something had ended and the only thing left to do was let it settle. That was the last conversation with my mother about any of it. Standing in the hallway with my hand on the lock, the decision was simple. The door that had been open for 30 years was now closed. Closed doors do not need announcements. If you are watching this on Karma Unfolded and someone in your life has treated your patience like permission, stay for the end of this one. Because what came next was quiet. And it was mine. 7 weeks after the credit alert, a plain white envelope arrived in the mail from the Social Security Administration. Inside it was a new card. My name, my number, printed clean on a piece of paper that no one else had touched. No one else had carried in a kitchen document holder for 16 years. No one else had pulled from a plastic slot and handed to someone because he asked nicely and she decided that was reasonable. Harper was in the kitchen when the mail came. She watched me open the envelope and look at the card without saying anything. She did not ask what it was. She had been there for all of it by then. Every stage, every silence, every night at the kitchen table. And she understood that this small rectangle of paper meant something larger than its size. The card went into my wallet, inside pocket, next to the badge. Troy, as of that week, was living in our mother's house, the childhood bedroom, the same room he had grown up in, with the same window that looked out at the same driveway where the Range Rover had been parked for 63 days and was now empty. Monique had moved out of the Pelham Court apartment while he was at his attorney's office and had not answered his calls since. Her phone went straight to voicemail every time. The federal review was ongoing. His lawyer had filed a cooperation notice, which changed nothing about the timeline or the outcome. The furniture credit line and the appliance lease were being unwound account by account. The debt he had attached to my name was being stripped from every system it had entered, line by line, form by form, until nothing of it remained. Gail had not called since the porch. She had told Aunt Colleen that I was going through something and would come around eventually. She had not told anyone she was the one who handed over the Social Security card. She had not told anyone that the federal referral included her name as a material facilitator. She was still hosting Sunday dinners. The chair at the foot of the table, the one I had pulled out 5 weeks earlier, was empty. Nobody sat in it. Nobody moved it. It just stayed there, holding a space for someone who was not coming back. Kenneth had not spoken to Troy since the dealership. He had moved into a motel off the highway 11 days after the dinner. Gail found out 4 days later. She drove there and sat in the parking lot for an hour. He did not come out. My credit score, 3 weeks after the fraud alerts cleared, was back to 789. Every account opened in my name was marked closed, fraudulent, no balance owed. The door Troy had walked through was sealed, documented, and filed in a system that does not forget. The new Social Security card was in my wallet. Harper was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where she had set a coffee mug down at 2 a.m. without a word 7 weeks earlier. The badge was in one pocket, a clean identity document in the other. That was enough. Harper looked at me the way she had looked at me that first night, the way someone looks at you when they already know the answer and are just waiting for you to arrive at it yourself. My name was on the card. The card was in my wallet. And for the first time in 16 years, I knew exactly where it was.